Hello to all my people, and if you're listening to this podcast, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botch Spots and Chair Shots. We still have high hopes of delivering quality wrestling content, but at worst, we'll deliver mediocre wrestling content, but we'll sprinkle in some Shark Week facts and mean tweets, you know, should we still get over it. I'm your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and I'm glad to be here with you on this journey, and today that journey will be our Superstar Showcase. Remember, here at Botch Spots and Chair Shots, we're calling in the ring from all the angles.
Are we filming or we're just...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got my buddy Bobby Mack here with us once again, the man with the yellow shoe guy. Bobby, what's up, brother?
Hey, how are you?
Yes, we are recording right now and video.
Say what?
Just so you know. So just kind of finishing the conversation that we started the last few times we've been talking. You and I have covered the Shield, then we covered the Wyatt family. Now we're going to kind of combine the two. So just kind of looking at the contrast between them, they both started in NXT. They both moved to the main roster. Then they both had separations between their teams. So let's kind of take a look at the similarities there. So take the first at bat.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the similarities, I think that when they came from NXT, they had a clear direction. They were over with the fans right away, both groups, whether you booed them or cheered them. And they collided with each other, and they kind of fit each other pretty well. Even though the Wyatts, you'd say, are the guys, a little out of shape compared to the Shield, it was almost like they were polar opposites, but they were being drawn to one another. And I think that's one of the great things about the group, about how the groups interacted with each other as well. You had really strong talkers with, Bray and with Dean Ambrose at that point, being able to lead the charge, and then they just matched up really well. The three guys, it just seemed like they were going to be a natural fit, like Dusty and Ric Flair.
Do you think the comparisons between the two had with when they were coming through? Because if you look at that NXT class from when Wyatt and all of them came in, like that whole class was stacked from top to bottom. It had Wyatt, it had Bo Dallas, Rollins in them, I think had been there a year or two, maybe, but not long. Like that NXT class coming through, they were stacked and have had multiple world champions. There were groups like 3MB, the Wyatt family, the Shield. You had guys coming all the way through that process and, multiple world champions.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about those groups, because you would think with multiple world champions, the Wyatts would be in that conversation, but especially when you compare them to 3MB. But the fact is...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The fact is, though, that 3MB has at least 2/3 of them have been world heavyweight champion, and the Wyatts only had one champion. And, I think the closest they came was when Harper won the United States Championship. That's still a step down from the world championship. Yeah. And it's surprising because when you see what he developed into with Brody Lee, he was potentially a world champion.
I think that we lost him early. Obviously, agree. Everybody says that. But when Luke Harper was in WWE, he was a world tag team champion and he was a United States champion. When he transitioned over to AEW and he came out as the leader of the Dark Order, he was also a mid-card champion, dethroning Cody and becoming the second TNT champion. I feel like had he not passed so soon, he would have absolutely been pushed into the championship picture. I feel like it would have been him and Omega looking to dethrone Moxley, not just Omega by himself. I feel like the three of them would have played a program together to figure out who was going to dethrone Moxley and take that belt.
Yeah, and I think he would have been an obvious tie-in with Moxley because of their history that they had in NXT, the history that they had in WWE. Being these two groups, just kind of comes full circle. It seems like the Shield, no matter what direction of them they were, whether they were a tag team, a 3-man, or singles, always fell into a battle with members of the Wyatt family.
So let's just go ahead and digress and move ahead into the conversation here and look at Bray Wyatt. He's the one right now. He's the biggest wild card of the whole group. We can obviously look at Luke Harper, Brody Lee, rest in peace. I feel like that his career goes without saying. Eric Rowan is kind of staying stagnant in the indie scene, so we'll just kind of bypass him too. No disrespect to that, but right now, just discussing the big three, so to speak, with WWE, AEW, and New Japan. I feel like those are going to be the three we talk about most with the people we have on the card tonight. So looking at Bray Wyatt. Everybody seems to think that he's moving to AEW. He'll probably be making his debut in the next week or two. So how do you feel about him moving to AEW? And what do you think about the possibility of him being in there? How would you book Bray Wyatt when you got him on your card?
I say you go after Moxley right away. You go after Moxley. I think the secondary thing you do with Bray is, one, he's got to have somebody telling him yes or no, because he's very creative. Some of the best cinematic matches have had him involved. The Fiend, that character, inside the Playhouse, that was mainly him producing. But I think you got to be careful, because if he gets in there and he starts getting too creative and too much, he's going to lose that aura. Kind of like when Matt Hardy first debuted there and started teleporting everywhere. That's going to be the big thing with Bray. I think you put him in there, he goes with Moxley, they have a great feud again. They reignite their feud from years past, and then in that time period, I think you can separate Matt Hardy from the weird group that he's in now, and then recombine Hardy and Bray, because I think they really did have a good chemistry with each other, and the way they were able to get those two odd characters over with each other, I think they've got good chemistry, and I think they'll play off well with each other.
Do you think if Wyatt makes his debut, excuse me, sorry, if Wyatt makes his debut in AEW, do you think they'll go with more of an Eater of Worlds style gimmick, or do you think they'll go with that dark fiendish style? Because they won't be able to use the Fiend, obviously, but do you think they'll go with that split personality, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or if they'll just go with the old like Cajun Swamp Master, like backwoods, dark soul, like all of the mystic kind of stuff that Bray Wyatt represented when he was the Eater of Worlds character versus the Fiend character with the Firefly Funhouse? Do you think that, I'm guessing that's what I'm asking long-winded, is the Eater of Worlds a better fit for AEW with that backwoods Louisiana Swamp King kind of look?
So you're ruling out Husky Harris completely?
I think Husky Harris might be spent with CM Punk being there. The whole Nexus thing, we could have a Nexus reunion. Bo Dallas is a free agent. Bo could come in. I mean, they got, yeah. Wasn't Hager?
Yeah, and that's something that they've been talking about too. Is that they've been talking about the fact that he wanted Bo Dallas to be part of his group in WWE, and for whatever reason, the powers that be just wouldn't let it happen.
Well, have you ever seen Bo Dallas work?
Hey, he's a former NXT champion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess so, but so is Sami Zayn, and he's also dead in the water too.
True. I don't know. I thought Bo, and off subject, I guess. I thought Bo Dallas, I thought he had a good little run with the the happy guy and all that kind of good stuff. But I also think that his B team had a chance. Like I thought that's the best I'd seen him and the best I'd seen Henning in either, I think, their careers. So I think really it's more about the push, because you can look at guys like Moxley, for example. I don't think Moxley's a great wrestler. He's not really even, he's a good entertainer. But at the same time, if you really put John Moxley in a match, are you really going to get a 5-star match out of him ever that doesn't involve tables or some kind of gimmickry to get him over, to get the match over?
Do you think that Moxley's always going to have that King of the Death Match mud style wrestling mantra that he's always been kind of attached to? Do you think that's always going to be his thing? Because when he got the WWE, they kind of tried to take that away from him. When he came in as the Lunatic Fringe, they kind of gave him that edge to being that kind of deathmatch guy, but WWE, they would never let him do it because the whole PG thing, like they got to keep everything like really easy. They got to watch what they do. Do you think that like he's always been that person, or do you think he just can't work?
I think he's always been that person, but I also think he does it because it hides his work.
I think that Moxley as a whole, when you look at him, and we'll just go ahead and roll into him and we can come back to Wyatt if we want. I feel like Moxley's only thing that he really has going for him now is his mic skills. The dude can cut a promo, but his matches are all falling very flat. They all do the same things. He does, he's got like 3 moves that he does. He finishes with a double arm DDT. The paradigm shift is great. One, you're not Cactus Jack. And 2, if you've got guys getting super kicked in the face with thumbtack tennis shoes and they're kicking out at 2, how are you going to convince me a DDT is finishing the baddest guys in the business?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem with, modern wrestling is the fact that things that used to be finishers are no longer finishers. They're just mid-card things. And I know people are going to go in here and say, well, a clothesline used to be a finisher or a body slam used to be a finisher back in the day. I get it. But when you see something devastating like a DDT, when you see something devastating like a pedigree, those kind of things should be finishers. It's a blunt force to your head, just like a blunt force to your back when you go through a table. But now a table spot's just the middle of the match, roll over, and then you give the guy a table spot.
Well, 62-year-old Sting went through a table. The natural Dustin Rhodes went through a table. Fuego del Sol recently went through a table. You've got Roman put somebody through a table. A table used to mean something when I was younger and I was watching wrestling. I used to remember how important it was when somebody pulled a chair out, pulled a ladder out, or pulled a chair out. I always thought those 3 things were super important, and they were usually saved for big time matches or pay-per-views. Now it seems like every single show you have a chair, a table, a ladder, some kind of like furniture being brought in, but there's no real direction to what they're doing. It's all for cheap pops.
Yeah, like you could look at like the early, or I think it was either late 80, I think it was like 89, when Terry Funk pile drove Ric Flair onto a table. The table didn't even break, but Flair walked around with a neck brace on for a month. You know, that kind of thing, when the DDT happened to Ricky Steamboat outside the ring, he legit was out. Those were dangerous moves. Chairs used to end matches. Obviously, this is going in a totally different direction, but ECW in the 90s killed all that. The Extreme Championship Wrestling, the stuff that Moxley fell in love with, is what killed the wrestling business, killed those kind of finishers. I'll say one of the best finishes I've seen recently, and that happened actually this week, was AEW. They brought back time limits, and there was actually a draw. Like, it was so compelling. Like, it meant something.
I was going to bring that up, and that's at the end. I have it listed. It literally in my notes says bonus conversation. So put a pin in that, because I was going to bring something up that was going along with the kayfabe, like the neck brace, when Andy Kaufman fought Jerry Lawler. Like, completely different worlds. Like, you had Lawler and you had Andy Kaufman coming on the show. They were going back and forth. He did the pile driver to him. And then Kaufman went into his own world, into the comedy realm, into everything, still wearing the neck brace. Like, that's the power of professional wrestling. People want to believe it's real.
Yeah. And, that's the whole thing. McMahon, when he, said it wasn't real, and just so he didn't have to pay licensing fees to the states that still had these sports groups there. And then all of a sudden, Paulie took it to the next level with ECW, with the chairs and all that kind of thing, and just kept exposing it. Who was it? La Parka, the chairman of the luchadors in WCW, smacking people with chairs all the time like it was nothing. It's as like a chair nowadays is as devastating as an eye rake. Like, agreed. You feel it for a minute and then it's done.
So, talking about the deathmatch stuff, wrapping back around Moxley, do you think in his near future, is he going to get another push in AEW for the World Championship? Or do you think he's probably going to be used in New Japan and pushed through their new American promotion, New Japan Strong? Do you feel like he's going to be used there, utilized more, where he has more of a following with that brand? Because right now, that style of wrestling is more over in Japan than it is here. People love deathmatch wrestling, but Japan really loves deathmatch wrestling.
Yeah, and I think that's a better fit for him. I don't see him ever being the top guy in AEW anymore. Especially with the group that you've got in there. You've got Punk, you've got Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryanson, or whatever his name is now. You've got Bray Wyatt possibly coming in. I just don't see Ambrose or Moxley getting to that level again. I think Tony Khan is smart enough to realize that he's got better guys now than what Moxley was. Yeah, Moxley was a great find for the beginning of this whole thing, just like Lex Luger was a great find for the first Monday Night War. But slowly Luger fell behind and never really made it at that top level again. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Moxley. I don't see him ever being at the top. I think the best he'll be able to do is if Bray does come to AEW and get in a feud with Bray, I think that'll elevate him a little bit, but I don't see him ever getting that world championship again.
I think he's got one more championship run in him, and I think it'll be in New Japan because I would really like to see him work with Will Ospreay because Ospreay is the flying, flippy, gymnastic-y kind of stuff. And I feel like that blending well with a good, hard brawler style run in Japan's, like in that strong style wrestling, I think it would be a good fit. So I think if he's going to have a title run, I think it's going to be there and he's going to get pushed in New Japan versus being pushed in AEW. Because you're absolutely right. Because rotating into another member of the Wyatt family, Bryan Danielson recently debuted. And going back to your point from Dynamite, he had a pure slobber knocker of a match against Kenny Omega. No denying that at all. So let's start there. He is technically a member of the Wyatt family, so it's still on topic.
Very true, very true. So that match, I'm not a huge AEW fan. I just turned it on and I couldn't stop watching it. I didn't even realize 30 minutes had gone by. Like when I heard Justin Roberts say 1 minute remaining, like I was like, I wasn't sure like what he really said. And then I realized what he said when the announcer said it. And I was like, I can't believe I've been watching this for 30 minutes. Like it was purely entertaining. That's probably the best I've ever seen Omega work. He didn't do all his flashy, weird stuff. I know other podcasters say jazz hands that he does, but he like that match, like that took me back to NWA 80s professional wrestling. When they came out of that, you could see they were in a fight. Their chests were red, they were worn out. You could tell or you could feel that these two guys wanted to beat each other. And they did.
It reminded me of Dragunov and Walter, because when those two guys finished their match at TakeOver, you could see they were chopped to death. And when Omega and Bryan Danielson finished this match, it was the same way. You could see them wearing the stripes from their match. They both were landing flush. They were both telling a good story. They were both letting the other guy get over, which I think is important. But long-term storytelling wise, you're absolutely right. This was the best thing booking wise to do, was to let this match finish in a draw. Because if one person wins or the other, it almost kills the story then, because if Omega wins clean, he wins clean. What Bryan Danielson moves to the back of the line, right? Now, if Bryan Danielson wins, then it's like, oh man, he's the guy to dethrone Omega. You almost feel like you have to push him to the belt. A true draw is a very old school booking way to do it, with Tony Khan at the helm, who's only been booking professional wrestling for 2 years. So he's either finally starting to listen to some of the guys in his locker room who are telling him what to do, or he's starting to rewatch some old good wrestling and being like, okay, maybe these are some of the things we could work in.
Yeah, well, look at what he came from to where he is now, like Tony Khan. He was originally surrounded by, Omega, the Bucks, Cody, all guys that never made it in the big show WWE.
Wait a
they
second.
Were big stuff.
But he did have Jericho. He had
Jericho. He had Jericho and he had JR. But now look who he's added. He's got Mark Henry. He's got Big Show.
Now, though. But like Jericho and JR, that's a pretty two. Like for you to say, but now, like those are two, without a doubt. Jericho will go to the Hall of Fame. There's no arguing. He's the all-time leader in Intercontinental Championship reigns. He was an AEW heavyweight champion. Like he's been a New Japan heavyweight champion. He's got gimmicks galore. Like the man will be a champion. Plus you got JR, and JR goes without speaking. He ran Vince's creative, the talent relations thing forever. He was Triple H back in the day to make sure the talent was handled. They were wrangled in. They were taken care of. Like those were two pretty solid guys to have in your corner. But I don't disagree. They have moved forward now, and they have a lot better guys. So
you have them. You've got Arn. You've got Tully. Again, you got Big Show. You got Mark Henry. Christian's there now. Great mind for the business. Matt Hardy. You've got all these WWE guys. I think the one thing that Khan's got to be careful about is not falling into the WCW trap of putting all the top WWE guys over all his guys and making them, as soon as they come in, they take the championships. And I think that match with Bryan Danielson was smart because of the draw. Because if he would have just come in and won, then that's just a WWE guy flattening the biggest AEW produced guy that they got. Punk, I like what Punk is doing. The fact that Punk is not going after all their top guys, he's going after these mid-card guys, and he's making them, like, he's winning, but he's making them all better just by being in the ring with them.
He's putting them over. Absolutely, I agree. So just out of curiosity, there were two big names that I just thought of that you left off to your list that were people that were in Tony Khan's ears. One is Sting, and the other is Jake the Snake Roberts. Any reason specifically you left both of those guys off your list, just out of curiosity?
Yeah,
I know you as a wrestling fan, so I'm curious to see how you respond to that.
I don't think Sting has a great mind for the business.
Well, he's a terrible worker.
Yeah, I don't think, he didn't lead any of the matches with Ric Flair.
No.
Ric Flair led those matches,
100%.
The Hogan match, Hogan led that match.
He did.
Yeah. So I don't think any good match that Sting's ever had is because of Sting. I think it's because of who he's working with. Jake Roberts, I think no matter how clean Jake is or anything like that, I'm not bashing him, I wouldn't trust that guy to walk my dog, let alone run my company or help me run my company. Because he's allegedly done enough drugs and alcohol in his life that the guy's brain can't all be there, and you can barely hear him when he speaks anymore. Like I know he has a reputation for talking low because he says if you talk low, people have to listen. Yeah. But it sounds like he's like smokes like a pack of like marbles before any time he goes out there to do an interview.
Let's also not forget that he is known for many stories floating around, both with people who were there and people who said they were there. He is apparently known for drinking his own urine. He's done that before in the locker room to kind of assert dominance, I guess. I don't know what the hell he was doing with that, but apparently that was a thing. I've heard that story floating around on a few other podcasts with people that have been interviewed about him. So I was thinking about it while you were saying what you were saying about Sting not being a good worker. I know you're less than a huge fan of Bret Hart. You and I have very different views on who Hart is as a person and who he is as a world champion, as a worker in the ring. I think he's one of the greatest of all time. You told me in a previous podcast episode that he only had 5 real moves and he just wasn't all that. So I figured.
But ironically, we're both wearing Bret Hart shirts.
I know. I was going to bring it up. I've got my Hart Foundation shirt on for you, but I was also thinking about the fact that you don't like Bret Hart, who I think is an amazing wrestler. My unpopular opinion is Sting. I don't think Sting's a good worker. I never did as a kid when he was young. I never did when he was, first coming up, like California Sting, when he first come out of, he was at the AWA. Was that right? Where he was at before he got signed with
Mid-South.
Or Mid-South rather. Yeah.
Yeah. UWF.
When he was there before he got moved over there and he signed with WCW and he had the feud with Flair and all of that. Like I knew when he was then, I still was just like this guy. And I don't want to lump him into it because, the Ultimate Warrior gets a really bad rap. Hellwig was a jerk. He said a lot of really messed up things. Like I won't even go into who the Ultimate Warrior was, but I almost feel like Sting gets lumped in there because they came up at the same time. Sting was that guy. He was a bodybuilder. He was a big dude at the gym. And they even say in one of the biographies that came out last year that Sting was just one of the 4 biggest dudes at the gym that they wanted to use to be professional wrestlers.
Yeah, Power Team USA out of California.
Yeah,
they both. Yeah, that was their original moniker before they became the Blade Runners. Yeah. But yeah, they trained together. They came up together. The only thing you could say is Warrior had a bigger ego than what Sting did, and felt like he was better than what he was. Whereas Sting, I guess, at least was smart enough to realize that he wasn't good and that he couldn't do what Warrior was attempting to do because they were too young in the business.
I don't want to say that they're the same person, and I'm not at all saying who I'm about to bring up is a comparison to Warrior, okay? But Warrior was known for not being a fan of wrestling. He wanted to make money. So he wasn't a professional wrestling fan. He was there because he was big, he could strong, and he could manhandle people. Do you see comparisons between him and Brock Lesnar and the fact that Lesnar's been notoriously known for saying he doesn't like wrestling, he's not a wrestling guy, like all of that, but he'll come into the ring because he gets the paycheck?
No, because Brock is a natural athlete, where Warrior isn't a natural athlete. He's I'd say Warrior's athletic. At least he looks like an athlete. He looked like an athlete. But naturally he wasn't. Brock is an NCAA world champion. He tried out for the Minnesota Vikings, never playing football except for in middle school. Didn't play football all of high school, and tried out for the Minnesota Vikings and made it to the last cut. He went to the the UFC and takes their championship. Like, the guy puts his mind to something and he does it. And you look at Brock, even though he's a part-time guy, he's been doing professional wrestling. He's been involved for like 22, 23 years. Like, it's amazing to think how long his actual span of his career is gone. I think his dislike of wrestling really comes more of the fact he doesn't like people, from what I understand. If you listen to
time on his farm.
Yeah. If you listen to Cornette talk about him in the developmental thing, all he wanted to do was get on TV, start making the money. But I think part of that is that competitive edge. When you put him in that match against Kurt Angle, he dug it. He it's somebody that he could work with, he could play off of, and he knew that they could have a really great match or great show. I think when you give him the right opponent, then Brock's into it. And a good example in this conversation, they gave him Dean Ambrose, and he wasn't into it. And you could tell in the match he wasn't into it. I think Roman Reigns brings something out in him to where he does get that passion. He does want to do well. He wants to have a good match. Another guy that I'm sure we're going to talk about is Seth Rollins. Brock wanted to have a good match with Seth Rollins, and he did. So I think it's really who they book Brock with. And at this point in time with Brock, he can pretty much say who he wants to go with and who he doesn't.
So using that as a segue, he's coming into Reigns. So let's talk about Reigns and his Universal title run. He's coming up on a year or just past a year. My times are off. I know he's close. He's well over 300 days. Do you think somebody like a Lesnar coming in is something that he needs for his title run? Or do you think, because he's got the Demon, we're recording this tonight on Sunday, so Extreme Rules is starting shortly, and he'll be going against the Demon. So I don't want this to be a prediction, but do you think that somebody like the Demon and then somebody like Brock Lesnar are what it's going to take to prevent Reigns' title run from becoming stale? Do you think introducing these new characters and introducing these new programs are going to be what it takes to get him to stretch? Because everybody's talked about Rock Reigns at WrestleMania next year. Like, that's been a big rumor.
Yeah, one is, here's a prediction. There's no chance the Demon's going to win.
Oh man, you mean to tell me they're not going to take the strap off of him? I had it in my heart. No, of course not. The Demon's no way he's going to win.
And I don't understand what's the difference between the Demon and Finn Balor other than paint?
He gets really angry and he takes 6 hours to put paint on. I cut a promo earlier for a podcast and I brought this up, okay? Prince Devitt, Finn Balor, the Demon. I literally said the word since he got to America and left New Japan. The man has had so many gimmicks. He's been forced to be everybody else except for himself. And that's driving me crazy because Finn Balor is one of my favorite workers in the business. And all they want to do is just tear him around and just keep him pumping and going. Like, he's getting mishandled. He's not getting used right. Like, I feel like there's no way he's going to dethrone Roman. Why is he not on Monday night against somebody like Big E, somebody he realistically could handle? Because now if Finn Balor, who weighs, he's in the cruiserweight division. He's got to be around 200, 205. Like, he's not a big dude. If somebody like Finn Balor dethrones Reigns after everything he's done, like, what does that make out of his title run?
Yeah, and it's not going to happen. There's no chance of it happening. And I know you're a Balor fan. I'm not. I don't see anything really great about Balor at all. He's small. Like, I'm probably bigger than the guy, not muscle-wise, but I guarantee if I'm standing next to him, I'm probably just as broad on my shoulders as what he is.
I have cancer and I weigh more than Finn Balor.
That is true.
I'm just saying.
That'd be a great T-shirt.
I have cancer and I still weigh more than Finn Balor.
Yeah. Yeah. Next time you go to Monday Night Raw, that should be your sign.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a fan of Finn Balor. I thought he was great in Japan, and when he got here, I agree. He lost the initial Universal title run because of his injury, but I think had he been able to get that push then, he would be a different Finn Balor now. I think going back to NXT kind of let him regroup and find out who he is as a character, because this version of Prince Finn Balor is the closest to Prince Devitt that we've had since he's been in America.
Yeah, and I thought NXT was a good fit for him. Like the guys down there are smaller. Like he looked competitive in NXT. I don't think on the main roster when he goes against somebody like Big E or goes against a Roman Reigns, I don't see him as viable. I don't see him as viable, And I guess devil's advocate, you could say, well, when Big Show goes out there against somebody, then Big Show should win every time. But he doesn't, obviously. So, I guess it's hit and miss. I guess it's like how you sell it. Like Ricky Morton, for example, could win against the big guy, but he was beat up the entire match. I think Balor's got too much offense in his matches, and I think that's why I have trouble believing any of his matches.
I think that he gives a different type of storytelling for your fan of professional wrestling, though. You and I are similar, but we're very different in our styles. We both prefer the old style. We both big fans of territory wrestling. We're both fans of that style, like pre-1995, like almost like Crockett Promotions, pre-Turner buyout, like getting it even into the 80s with the kind of wrestling you and I watch. But I still like that British strong style. I'm a big fan. Walter's one of my favorite guys. Dragunov is one of my favorite guys. Balor, like this really strong style of wrestling that came out of the British Isles over the last 5 or 10 years. I'm a big fan of that because in my opinion, it's still catch as catch can style wrestling. Like it's still hard, like in there, in your face, throwing chops, good raw wrestling. But it also gives you a chance to remember what wrestling was truly about, because these guys aren't using a bunch of furniture. They're not using chairs. They're not using tables. They still want to wrestle. And I think,
yeah, and I like how you almost use a word that would have turned that whole argument into a bad word now. And that's hardcore.
Yeah.
Because you can't say hardcore anymore because you think of these fake chairs and the fake tables and ECW and all that stuff, But to me, I'm not offended by the word hardcore when you talk about people like Terry Funk. I'll say his name. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, not people, but wrestlers. Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko. That they had hardcore styles. Even Eddie Guerrero, when you watch his stuff in California, even though he's got the flips and stuff like that, it's still pretty hardcore wrestling. Like I remember watching Eddie Guerrero when I was a kid at my grandparents' house because they had some weird access thing to a California station. And, those matches, they're hardcore. They're the real hardcore before ECW and the hardcore championships and all that other stuff stole the name or stole the meaning of hardcore.
I think that the hardcore title itself would be a better direction they should go if they wanted to like the 24/7 title. Let me start this over, okay? The 24/7 title was originally the same concept of what the hardcore title was. Defended 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All you had to do as a referee, false count anywhere. You could win the title anywhere. I feel like I would rather have the hardcore title now versus the 24/7 title.
Yeah, any day. Like one, you have Mick Foley introduce the belt, the 24/7 championship. So everybody right away is assuming it's the hardcore title coming back.
Yeah.
And that's disappointment one. Disappointment two is the way the belt looks. And then three is it just becomes a goofball championship. Like when Hardcore Holly had it and the 24/7 funniness started, it was funny but entertaining. Now it's like who's the guy that used to have the conga line, that the dancing and all that kind of stuff? Like it feels like that. Like you got all your mid-carders. Like when a guy is getting ready to get termed or get fired from WWE, you see them in that line. And it was a shame because I didn't see it, but I've heard now Jeff Hardy is part of that 24/7 championship title picture, and
I
he's
think
one of the guys running after them.
I think Hardy's going to get a push. I think, and this will be my prediction, and I might eat these words later. This tweet might not age well, as the kids say. I think Hardy might be in the process of getting pushed into the U.S. title run because they're about to finish out his contract, and he's going to leave, and he's pretty much all but guaranteed in AEW when his contract expires because they want to bring the Willow character out. AEW is the only chance he'll have to actually use that gimmick. So I think it's all but said when his WWE contract is up, he's going to AEW. So I think that right there is it. So I feel like they might be getting ready to give him one more good push before he's finished up.
Right.
So
yeah, I
sorry,
think at least they're going to push him hard enough to where then they can beat him, and then when he goes to AEW, I guess like what Ole Anderson said about Ric Flair, he's damaged goods when he lost to when Flair lost to Mr. Perfect on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Let's wrap this around. We got one more guy to touch base on that's left from the Wyatt Shield reunion. Let's talk about Seth Rollins real quick before we wrap up. Do you think he's just kind of treading water right now? Is he waiting for another run, or do you think they're out of options with him right now?
I think his only option is going against Reigns. I think that's the only way he's going to be a viable player again. The thing with Edge is what it is. But I'm not even watching WWE much anymore. Like I'm listening to the different people's podcasts for listening to what the shows were all about. But to me, Rollins hasn't been anything exciting or anything for a long time. And I think he really lost a lot when he lost the belt the last time, and he's just kind of been on this downward spiral. Like I thought the Monday Night Messiah had potential because he can talk, he can do that. But when he had the group, when he had what was it, Isaac Yankem?
Yeah, it was it was Buddy Murphy, and it was the APA, the authors of not APA, it was the authors of Pain, AOP.
Yeah. So I thought that had a good nucleus. I thought that was a good group. But when AOP can't stay healthy, they injure their quads worse than Kevin Nash does just by walking.
Worse than Vince McMahon sliding into the ring at the Rumble, right?
Yeah. Actually, Kevin Nash actually banned me for making a quad joke one time.
Really?
Yeah.
I got the Botch Spots Twitter is banned by Ryback.
Nice.
Yeah, that was our first big ban. We got blocked by that was our first professional wrestler to block us, was Ryback.
Nice. What was his name in NXT or Nexus?
I don't think
Ryback. Skip Sheffield.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got blocked by Skip Sheffield.
Yeah, I did.
And now we're talking about Husky Harris going to AEW.
Husky Harris versus Skip Sheffield. I'm booking it 2021.
Yeah, but the problem is you won't be able to invite Skip because you've been banned.
That's true. I won't be able to send him an offer because he has no idea. All right.
Yeah.
I feel like Rollins is treading water. I don't feel like he's in a position to be pushed. I think he could be a viable Intercontinental Champion right now. He's got to move on from this delirious character that he's got going, this baked potato look where he's wearing the ridiculous suits. That's not his gimmick. Give me back my burn it down, King Slayer, Beast Slayer, Seth Rollins. Give me Rollins in the Night King gear from WrestleMania where he's got the blue eyes. Like, give me a good, hard Rollins. I want to get away from this crazy. He's good on the mic, but he's not great. I just feel like he's showing his own weaknesses in the ring, and he's not really having a chance to like do anything. He's talking in circles. He's moving around. Like, I just don't really care for it. And then his in-ring work's not great because he's working with a broken character like Edge. I love Edge. Adam Copeland's a great worker. He's been amazing his entire career, but the man's broken. He's got a rough neck. It's hard for him to really like push too hard. So I feel like because of that, with the program he's in, he's just kind of stagnant right now. A winded way of saying Rollins just isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you want to see harder Rollins, I think there's some photos out there on the internet you can check out.
Whatever. Of course your brain would go there. So your girl, Liv Morgan. So pretty much through the Wyatt. Let me ask you this. I see your face. You're so I know you. And if there was a person that could check all of the boxes, that is Bobby Mack. Liv Morgan is that person. Do you think she
is?
If she gets over tonight, do you think she makes a run for the SmackDown title?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't want to say, I hate when people say this, but I think she deserves it. I think she's been working really hard to the fact that, she's building up a good reputation on the internet. Like she's getting internet support. She's getting a lot of people behind her on the internet, which sometimes is either make you or break you in the WWE. Um, I think her in-ring work is the best it's ever been, which isn't saying, that she's Lou Thesz, but I think she's come a long way. And I think um, her interview skills have gotten better with losing the Riot Squad around her. She really is coming on her own. And I think it's kind of showing that maybe being in the Riot Squad, she was okay being the third banana. But now that she's actually being allowed to show off and be out there, I think that she deserves a shot.
Who says third banana? Really? What does that even mean?
You never heard Gorilla Monsoon?
He says third banana.
No, he's dead.
God, I hate you, Bobby, so much. Okay, all right, I've got to tell you. Tell me the news you heard today. I got to get this on there.
Oh, that John Cena was found unconscious and brought to the hospital.
Yeah, that's what you were telling me. What about it?
Yeah, it was crazy because I guess when he came to, he looked at the nurse and asked where he was, and she said the ICU. And he looked at her and goes, "You can't see me."
And I hate you so much. God, I hate you. All right, Bobby Mack, plug your stuff. Tell all of our guys where they can find you.
Yeah, go to TikTok. You can check out the Yellow Shoe Guy. There's roller coasters. I just added dogs to the mix. Me walking around with one yellow shoe, sometimes two, crazy enough. Talking about coasters, talking about fun, just being stupid in Tampa. That's what I'm good at.
I love it, Bobby. I appreciate you, buddy. As always, I'm going to hop off here, go watch some Extreme Rules, and try to see if WWE puts me to sleep before 11 o'clock.
All right, sounds great. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Bubba. I'll see you soon.
All right, later.
Bye.
Now, as we close another episode of Botch Spots and Chair Shots, I'd like to take this chance to thank you for listening. Remind you to go to wherever you pick up your favorite podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Geez, so many options. Take a moment to like, subscribe, unsubscribe, then subscribe again. Leave a comment telling us how great we are, how terrible we sound. Either way, it helps the algorithm and gets to find new listeners. It helps to get our word out there. Make sure to follow us at Botch Spots and Chair Shots on Twitter and Instagram. I am your host, The Will Gray, and thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.